If you watched my live pregnancy test, then you will know that I saw my positive pregnancy test at 9 DPO, but now looking back at all these photos and putting them together, I think I actually might have had a few positives at 8 DPO, but they were very, very faint. When you look at these photos, maybe you will have the same opinion. Good morning and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Nicole and today I am doing a long-awaited video, and that is my pregnancy test line progression. And if you have been watching my live pregnancy test videos, then you know what tests I have been taking, but if you don't, then I am going to show you the Easyatome pregnancy test, the Proov pregnancy test, the Wondfo very sensitive, I believe that's what it's called, and Frida Fertility pregnancy test, the Clearblue Pink dye test, and first response, the early result test. I did not take every test for the same amount of time. I ran out of a few tests and then I just decided not to buy any more, but I started at 7 DPO and I tested past my missed period, so we can look at all the results together if you are interested in knowing what these tests may look like for you if you are an early tester like me. Let's start with the Cheapie test and work our way up to first response. And before I even show you guys all of these tests, I want to give you a heads up that if you watched my live pregnancy test, then you will know that I saw my positive pregnancy test at 9 DPO, but now looking back at all these photos and putting them together, I think I actually might have had a few positives at 8 DPO, but they were very, very faint. When you look at these photos, maybe you will have the same opinion, or maybe you won't be able to see them at all, but I think that maybe I actually had my first positive at 8 DPO. Let's start with Easyatome pregnancy test first. I took probably the most of these because I had them at the beginning and I tested all the way till 18 DPO, where I kind of felt like, okay, the lines aren't really getting much darker. If you look at all these tests, you can see at 9 DPO, there is the faintest line on there. I do not think I can see anything at 8 DPO. But for the most part, every day after 9 DPO, my test got darker until about 14 DPO. And then it kind of took 2 days of the same colored test before it would get darker. And I decided to stop taking the pregnancy test at 18 DPO because wasn't really progressing all that much. Next, I took the Proov pregnancy test, and you can see 7, 8 DPO. It looks super, super blank. Maybe the faintest line at 9 DPO, but then it barely even looks positive at 10 DPO. I will have to say, I think these are my least favorite tests. I had a few obviously positive lines on Proov test where I didn't have lines on any of my other pregnancy tests in prior cycles. So in my opinion, I don't think I'd be buying these again if I were to be taking more pregnancy tests. And if you followed along with my journey, then you will see that time that we had a very obvious positive Proov test, but I was not pregnant. The next one is the Wonfo very sensitive or extra sensitive. I can't remember the name now, but I will add it here. Let me actually, I pulled out one of the pregnancy tests I have for Wonfo because I have more left. It is the extra sensitive pregnancy tests by Wonfo. They are orange. I do not know what the other Wonfos are like. I hear like contradicting statements about Wonfo. Some people love them, some people hate them. But in all honesty, I really wish I would have had Wonfo sooner, because my 9 DPO Wonfo is pretty clear. It's still faint, but it's pretty clear. I think if I would have tested at 8 DPO, it would have been a pretty good line, which just makes me wish that I would have started testing with it sooner. But I had just bought these and I was new to taking these tests. They just seem very sensitive. If I can compare it to the results of the Easyatome, maybe I'll add a little photo here and you can see the Easyatome lines compared to the Wonfo lines for the same exact DPO. You can see the Wonfo lines are a lot stronger than the Easyatome lines, and I did feel like my lines were getting darker and darker and darker every test. And then about 18 DPO, 17 DPO, they kind of look the same. So I decided to stop testing with these as well. Next, let's talk about the Frida Fertility test. I wish I would have had more of these to take, but I purchased these online and I tried to go to Target to see if they had more in store, and they did not. So unfortunately, like if I would have ordered them online, by the time they got here, it would have been too late to keep taking the line progression tests. But at 7 DPO, I saw nothing. At 8 DPO, when I took the test, I thought I could see the faintest line, but I was like, oh, I don't think these are real, because I've never had like a good positive line on one of these Frida fertility tests. So I just totally was like, yeah, probably not real. In the photo, I don't think you can really see it, but in person, I thought I saw something, but I just didn't really believe it. And then 9 DPO line is really, really faint, but you can see it in the photo. 10 DPO line is obvious. So if you're taking a 10 DPO test and you ovulated around the same time as me, implanted around the same time as me, then you would have a positive at 10 DPO. And I think that's really the point of looking at all these tests, to see if your lines may look similar to someone else's based on when you think you ovulated. Personally, I think I implanted probably around 5 DPO, and I'm going to have a video going through that as well. If you would like to watch that video, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it when I post it to my channel. Next, let's talk about the Clearblue Pink dye tests. I have to say, I think these are one of my favorite tests. I didn't ever really experience false positives on these tests. They seem like they are pretty accurate, but they are very, very faint to me. So you really have to look at them to make sure your result is, accurate, and that you're not maybe missing a line. This is also one of the tests that at 8 DPO, I did not think I could see anything at all. But if you can look at these photos, and you could see that at 8 DPO, wow, okay, not talk. But you can see at 8 DPO, there is a very, very, very faint line. And when you see it right next to the 9 DPO, which is still a faint line, but a little bit darker, it almost makes it easier to see that 8 DPO line. At least it does to me when I'm zooming in on my photo. But 7 DPO is blank, and it was a very slow progression of these tests until 13 DPO. It's a pretty strong line. I do think if you're the kind of person that needs to have a bold line to be like, yes, I'm pregnant, then these might be a little stressful for you, because I do think that these lines are very, very faint compared to the first response lines, which you can see here. They are bold lines. Even when it's the faint 10 DPO, very, very bold line. 9 DPO, an obvious to see line, even though it is still faint. And this is another test that I think at 8 DPO, I may have had a very, very, very faint line that maybe I just couldn't see because I wasn't trying to see a line that wasn't there, right? But now when you look at these photos, you can see the 8 DPO test had the faintest little line. So I think at 8 DPO I had HCG in my system high enough to pull up on a pregnancy test, but they are just very faint. And you can see by 14 DPO I had a dye stealer pregnancy test for first response, where it took the other tests a lot longer to get dark, and I think that if I keep testing with the Cheapies, it would have eventually been a complete dye stealer, but I don't know how many more days it would have taken me of testing with them, where the first response had a very obvious dye stealer at 14 DPO. I think this is why so many people love the first response and stick to the first response, because it gives you those very obvious positive pregnancy tests that I think we all need to have that reassurance. If you're wondering if I took any digital tests, I did take a digital test at 10 DPO and it came back as pregnant. So my lines that you see at 10 DPO were strong enough to give me a positive digital on a Clearblue. I also did a comparison of the old first response and the new first response to see if the old first response was more sensitive than the new first response, and I will leave that video here if you would like to go watch it. But I will see all of you in my next video.